I'm walking down towards we're really close to a school here with a big wide open field so you can see the mountains. My yard this whole summer would have been very lovely for me to sit in and have this background, but of course fall has already come, so all my flowers have started to fade away.
You're walking through the mean streets of Anchorage, right?
Well, yeah, I'm walking through my neighborhood, which is called Fairview, and it is a neighborhood not far from downtown Anchorage.
Now, I've read from your website, Emma Hill, that you've spent plenty of time south of the border. As a person who grew up in Alaska, I'm assuming, what are some of the names that you have for people who live in the lower 48?
Oh, names? I mean, we just call it the big thing is just, you live in the lower 48. I don't think we have like specific nicknames for you. At least I don't. The big thing is just always talking about, like, it's not the same when you live, like, for example, when I lived in Oregon going to school, I could zip up to Seattle and see my brother when he was in grad school up there. Like here, you're not going to just easily leave. You're either getting on a plane. See, how you can see the mountains behind me.
Wow. And what range is that?
Now, this is the Chugach Range behind me. It's a very, very large mountain range, and it's so beautiful right now with all the fall colors. Fall is just like really hit in the last week. It's been such a huge difference just in the last week of just kind of being rainy and a little chillier, but all the colors have really started to pop out.
When people from the lower 48 come up, on their boats, stars in their eyes, what preconceptions do you find that you need to disabuse them of?
The big thing is, I think people it's a lot better now. I think even not that long ago, though, there's a lot of preconceived notions as far as just that we were, almost like a third world country. And which you have to understand, it depends on which part of Alaska you're in. Like I grew up in a very tiny village in the western interior part of the state, and that is kind of like a third world village. It's small, it's rural, you have to fly to get there. There's no roads, there's no cars, there's only about 100 people in the town where I grew up. So I've lived both sides of it. I've lived the tiny, what they call bush Alaska life, and then now I live the city Alaska life, which Anchorage is our largest city, of course. So I don't know, I mean, when we were kids, you joke, but people think we lived in igloos and all of that crazy stuff. But then it's hard because people go, oh yeah, and dog mushing. I'm like, yeah, I know dog mushers. That's a thing. It's not used in the same way as, of course, it was used traditionally. It's now a passion that a lot of people have, where it's like a tradition that they want to keep alive. So they basically have decided to marry a dog team. It's a lot of work. It's their entire life. And it's cool. So there's like these little things that are not, they're just really exaggerated, but they're not completely wrong. But yeah, no, I mean, I live in a city of 300,000 people. Everybody drives around, and I mean, the big thing is, it's coming on winter, so everyone's going to start to have to put their studded tires on so we don't run into each other over and over again.
So when you go up to the little village that you grew up in, where do you experience the culture shock? So for example, you go back to your native village, or you go down to Portland where you also have a life.
It works both ways. Like I actually was just out in Sleetmute. Sleetmute's the name of my village, Sleetmute, and it's on the Kuskokwim River, Sleetmute. And I was just out there actually visiting my dad. My dad still lives there several weeks ago now, and hadn't been back in quite some time. So it was definitely, it's not a shock. It's both like, it was nice. It was nice going home. It's nice to have those feelings of nostalgia and see my dad and get some quality time with him, especially with this insane year we're having. And got out and, went kind of did our traditional things, went fishing. It was silver salmon season. So I went salmon fishing, and blueberries were ripe. So we went blueberry picking on the tundra, and I baked a pie, and, just kind of getting back to my roots.
Was it a salmon pie or a blueberry pie?
A blueberry pie.
Okay.
No, we grilled the salmon.
All right.
Had blueberry pie for dessert. Um, but yeah, the big thing you notice is it's very quiet. I brought my partner out there. He had never seen Sleep Mute. He'd only heard me talk about it, and he'd never been to any other village in the bush. And so, it's his first time. We flew out there in a Cessna 206. He'd never been in a small plane before. He was pretty terrified, but he handled it well. And then, yeah, getting out there, he just kept being like, "I can't believe how quiet it is. I mean, there's just no noise. I mean, no noise." Except a little bit of a hum from like the town generator. And then of course when a plane flies over. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's just, you're hundreds of miles away from any other civilization. So it's very quiet.
I do imagine that in a place like Sleep Mute, as you've described it, that plane flying over is, um, registers on the sound meter quite significantly.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, and actually there's a small plane. So where I live here in Fairview is right next to Merrill Field. So it's one of the biggest small plane hubs in the world, as far as I know. So I still get that magical sound almost daily, even here in the city, which it's very fond for me because my dad's a pilot. So I grew up, usually if the plane was flying over, it was dad coming home from doing a grocery run, or he hauled fuel as part of we had a store and lodge and fuel business out there. So it was, it's very much a sound that I associate with love and good feelings. So
you probably also have a really pleasant association with airplane fuel.
My dad used to tease us because we'd complain about how awful his plane smelled, and he'd say, "Well, kids, that's the smell of money." So yeah.
When did you pick up the guitar?
Guitar came later. I plunked around on piano. My parents got me a keyboard for out there. I always sang. Vocals has always been my main instrument. And songwriting came really young too. So in the beginning, I wrote a cappella songs, and then I plunked around on a piano. So I wrote songs on piano. I was never great piano player. I was just more of kind of could clunk out some decent chords. And yeah, it wasn't until 16 that I picked up the guitar, which came a lot more naturally to me. Again, I'm not a lead guitarist by any means, but I'm a fairly proficient rhythm guitar player, and was playing out with that thing by 17. So yeah, I started doing my first professional gigs about a year after picking up the guitar, because it was just, for me, it was finally a way for me to have this tool for my voice and my songs, which is something I'd been doing my entire life. So yeah, here we are 14 years later.
When you picked up that guitar and you went and played out, were you playing out in Sleep Mute, or would you have to throw the guitar in the back of your dad's plane?
No, by that time, actually, I went to high school in Palmer, the town I mentioned that is about a 45-minute drive north of here.
Okay.
That's where my dad was born and raised. My mom lived there from the time she was a young adult until she and my dad moved out to the village. So lots of family there. And I actually went halfway through my freshman year of high school. I moved in and lived with some cousins and went to high school there because they had a really killer music program. And of course, that was non-existent out in Sleep Mute. And so, yeah, for a number of reasons, I was ready to come and be in somewhat normal civilization. But that was without a doubt, the best part of it is I got access to an amazing, amazing high school music program run by Stan Harris. And yeah, I learned so much during my time there.
When people come north, and because Alaska has this romance and mystery about it, you have to pass through another country to get there. When people come north to Anchorage because they've seen Ice Road Truckers or Northern Exposure or something like that, what is the hardest thing that you've seen they need to acclimatize themselves to?
Well, if it's just Anchorage, that's a whole different thing. If they're coming to the city, it's a lot easier to adjust to. It's a city. It's going to have a lot of your basic, needs and normal kind of schedules and accessibility and things like that. So I think people do, when that's just the move, they tend to do way better because it's a jump, but it's not nearly as big. I would say for them, their big thing they're going to have to get used to is they're going to have to get used to the darkness in the winter and the cold, although it really depends on where they come from, because if they're coming from the Midwest, the way that the world works now with climate change, like they're probably getting colder winters in the Midwest than we are here in Anchorage. I'm not to say in all of Alaska, but here, because we're South Central and we're on the water, we actually have pretty temperate, winters. Like the coldest I've seen here in a long time was actually last Christmas. It was like -10 or -12 or something.
Oh, that's
And
nothing.
I hadn't seen that in a while. Whereas my hometown, Sleep Mute, still regularly, because it's interior, sees -40, -50.
Wow. And
So it's really that's what it's like, the difference, right? Like, are you going somewhere where you're suddenly completely isolated, have no way to leave except by airplane, and have the possibility of having to like keep alive in 50 below, as opposed to like, oh, did you move to a city and yes, it's darker in the winter and it's colder, but you have, a heated garage and you're still eating at wherever your friggin' favorite chain restaurant is. I'm not a chain restaurant person, so, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it really, really varies.
What's the difference in your wardrobe between Anchorage and when you go visit your dad in Sleep Mute? And by the way,
Definitely.
just tangentially, everybody who's watching the Verdugo HUUT now is opening up another window and they're map questing Sleep Mute.
Oh yeah, y'all need to do some Google Earth of that, like just to like have your minds blown a little bit. No, it's funny that you say that, because so when I was out there, I mentioned before that I had left my parents when I was pretty young and moved in with some relatives, and I was searching through the basement. Well, it's more of a crawl space, but this where we have some stuff stored, and I came across all these boxes of my old clothes, which now are considered vintage because they're from the late 90s and early 2000s. And so I had all these crazy, like, giant platform shoes and stuff. And I showed them to Spencer, my partner, and he was laughing so hard. He was like, where were you wearing those? And I tried to explain. I was like, you try to be like an emo teenager in the middle of nowhere. Like, you still want to do all the same stuff. Like, you still want to, you're trying to, like, at least I didn't know. I was trying to follow the trends, and, everything, all my clothes I'm ordering by like catalog, but like whatever's in, I'm like, that seems cool. So it's pretty funny because I now have like a Depop site set up, and like people are buying like my vintage, like barely used platform bongo boots and weird clothes that I just found, like a little time capsule. So that's kind of funny that you say that. But no, when I'm going out these days, usually, again, it's probably because I'm going to be doing some outdoor stuff. I usually have my good rubber boots and some nice warm layers, depending on what the weather is. Alaska is a huge, huge, vast state. I know people think we're just saying that because we're trying, like, in a weird battle with Texas, but we legitimately, if you put us from tip to tip, we cover like the entire lower 48 from tip to tip. So it's a lot of land going on up here. So yeah, it was fires in different parts of the different regions of the state, but definitely on the road system, as we call it, like, anywhere basically from Homer all the way up to, Fairbanks and past there, all up and down the road system. There were fires that definitely took out homes and lodges and, millions of acres and stuff. So it was scary. It was, it's always sad. So, any disaster like that, it's both humbling and very sad, because people are like, oh, nature always wins. It's like, well, that was a form of natural, like, yes, the disaster has the word natural in it, but we're not exactly seeing things as a result of natural. We're seeing results of our actions. So even and especially in Alaska, that's another thing, is people don't realize we're seeing climate change up here, very real and clear. Glaciers are melting at unprecedented rates. All the fires we had last year, the drought, the high temperatures. So this year was really, really so thankful for the fact that it was a more mild and somewhat more normal Alaskan summer.
So you don't just blame the whales for everything, because I would.
Those damn whales. It's just south of here. I just the other day actually got to see a pod of belugas. There's a spot probably about 20 minutes south, 25 minutes south of my house on the Seward Highway called Beluga Point, and it's a spot in the inlet where this large pod of belugas comes, which there's not many of those left, so it's pretty rare to still see them. And they're beautiful little small gray whales. But when you go down out, of course, when you get on the actual ocean, when you're out leading out of Whittier or Seward or Homer, if you're lucky, you get to see whales, which I didn't get to see any this summer. I went halibut fishing, but I got to see all kinds of sea otters and other beautiful things, and caught a bunch of really great halibut to put in my freezer. So it was still a successful day on the ocean water.
You know, the extent to which I get to have those natural experiences is I go out with my dog and I try to keep him from eating opossums. Most of the time I'm successful. When you're out and playing in Anchorage, what describe your crowd? Do you get an all ages group? Does it get pretty rowdy? Are there fights?
It really depends, and all those things are not out there questions at all. It's changed over the years for sure. As I've gotten older and grown with my career, I definitely don't do as many of the rowdy bar shows as I used to. Another big reason for that is I quit drinking 3.5 years ago. It's not that I don't ever play bars, but some of those nights that I could kind of justify it off in my head as being a little bit of a rowdy, just so we'll get through at night. But I'm a lyricist, so ideally, in anytime I'm playing music, I'm playing for a seated listening room audience. I play a lot of house concerts, and then I also usually get hired to play some of the larger festivals and things that happen up here, and the state fair and things like that. But as
Oh, the
far as like
Alaska State Fair, that must be
the
great.
Alaska State Fair, oh, it's unlike. I mean, it's like the best of the best. It was a very big deal that they canceled it this year. Like a very everyone just couldn't. It was like the thought of a year going by and the fair didn't happen was mind blowing.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm very glad they canceled it just for safety's sake. I will do the occasional kind of I'll still do a couple dinner shows. It's for me. It's just if it's a weeknight, it's a spot 20 minutes from my house, and they just kind of want me to go and do the be the background up on the stage, kind of just. I'll still occasionally do those shows, because especially when I'm home and I'm not on tour, it's it's easy. It's money, I've got to make a living. But as far as promoted and very shows I take very seriously and that I'm promoting and selling tickets for, those are going to usually be in seated listening room venues, whether it's a coffee house that I take over for the night and take all the tables out and put chairs out, or a small theater or something like that. But yes, back in the day, I've had crazy experiences. I have for 9 years have flown out to this small village in Bristol Bay called Naknek, and played a festival called Fishtival, which is all things fish related, and celebrates because it's the Bristol Bay is a huge salmon fishery area. When you're talking about those salmon packing
Yep.
factories, that's where tons of them are. And so I've been hired to go out there and be part of that for years. And the very first time I went and played, I accidentally started a town riot, not on purpose, but apparently it was the biggest night of the year. Everybody had just come in off the boats, and they were all, wanting to get drunk, hadn't been able to, they're not allowed to drink on the boat. And they all had, pockets full of money. And there was only so much room in the bar where I was playing. And all that was being talked about was that there was a girl in this bar playing a guitar. And there was a line down out the door, out the block, around, and the state troopers ended up getting involved, or one of them. I'm sure there's only one stationed there, but anyways, it was this big thing, and the door guy was laughing so hard, and I was in the middle of my set, and he and I had kind of become friendly. And I kept looking at him like, what is he, I'm like, I'm not really playing a fun, I wasn't making any jokes. I was trying to figure out what the heck. And then after I took a break, and I walked over and I said, what are you laughing at? And he says, look out the door. And I looked out the door, and there was just a line. There were fights broken up. People were punching each other. He's like, this is all because of you. I'm like, what? I didn't do. He's like, no, I know you didn't do anything, but this is all happening right now because word is on the street that there's a girl in here playing guitar, and it's the spot to be, and no one else can get in. And I said, well, geez, okay. And I kind of waved at everybody. And then I think I went out and played a song on the porch, and then went back, and the trooper came and found me the next day and said, thanks for causing such a ruckus.
Well, Emma, when all this blows over, I see you've done a lot of tours of the Western states and into the heartland. Um, is your next move, once there's a vaccine and once the lower 48 opens up again and is not on fire, um, to do a more expansive West Coast tour?
Um, I mean, I've been touring for years. I'll probably hit the West Coast would be first for sure, just because we have so many dedicated, wonderful people and fans and friends, people that, we play a lot of house concerts. So a lot of those hosts have become like family to us. We've watched their kids grow up and all of that. But my last tour, right before, we literally almost didn't make it out of Europe when coronavirus hit. We finished our European tour on February 25th. And I landed in Phoenix, where Spencer, my boyfriend, was waiting for me. And Brian, my bandmate, flew home to Portland. And both of us within, I guess, 25th, that means within 2 weeks of that time, everything was starting to shut down and get very serious. So Spencer and I literally just barely made it across the Canadian border driving back home before they
Wow.
closed the Canadian border. So it was I was exhausted. We did 3 weeks tour. I think we had one night off, and we were driving ourselves all over, primarily Germany, but we had a Swiss date and a couple Swiss dates, and where else were we? Anyways, it doesn't matter. But we were just very tired, playing and just all of it, dealing with all the things that come with being in a foreign place, which I love. But when you're managing and trying to make sure you're driving the right way.
Yep.
Luckily Germany, at least you're on the right side of the road. But just as far, trying to read signs and understand things and all that stuff was a very already kind of taxing month. And then to come home and just but I can say that and say how, complaining, but I've just never been so thankful, because good friends of ours, Jeffrey Martin, Anna Tivol, so many people that we know and love were just starting their European tours of the year, which, of course, takes so much money, energy, time to set those things up, and literally had to just cancel all their shows. We're waiting in giant lines trying to get back on planes before they cut off planes being allowed to fly over. I mean, we really got lucky. We missed it by a very narrow window, and I'm so glad, because it sounds like it was hell.
Well, when the Verdugo HUUT is not online, we're in this beautiful 100-seat Unitarian Universalist church sanctuary, which is
Cool.
all woody and great place to hatch salmon, I imagine, and gabled, and it would sound so good around a voice like yours. So we're gonna do this thing where we end the interview and then we start playing your songs. Where can people find you online, and what are you going to be singing tonight?
So folks can find all things Emma Hill at emmahillmusic.com. Big thing I'm pushing right now, of course, is a pandemic on. I'm not able to tour the way that I normally am. And, you can find all my music on all the normal streaming platforms. But I will say, if you decide you like the music and you want to become a supporter, Patreon is a wonderful way to do that. Patreon.com/Emma Hill. We've been putting out demos of new unreleased songs. I've been doing special little videos and just little updates, trying to definitely make sure that we're giving special attention to our patrons, just to let everyone know how much we appreciate that support during this incredibly difficult time to be a full-time musician. And yeah, I think I'm going to do tonight a mix of some really new material, because why not? I figure if we're going to make some new fans, I might play something that no one's heard before, because, well, I've been in quarantine and writing. So, and then, I'll do a very Alaskan one. I'll do an older one of mine. I'll do Denali, just because that's one of my most Alaskan pride songs, and it's just talking about our great mountain, Denali, the great one, and all the beauty that part of the state provides, and kind of I don't know, something I always get excited to come home to and see and remember that this beautiful state is where I call home. So yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are so glad to present Emma Hill from Anchorage.
Hey guys, so yeah, I mentioned I was going to do my song Denali. kind of my Alaskan theme song. I was meant to roll over land and sea. I was meant to claim I am mountain peaks. I was meant to search the word I know is true, finding all that's right, finding all that's good. I've seen many things. The lights, they shine and pass like a dream. The bus in Costa Rica buzzes noisily, and it still takes my breath away to see Denali. I was meant to live, fire in my heart. I was meant to find light out in the dark. I was meant to hold the world would somehow see path to better days, path to finding peace. Oh, I've seen many things. The northern lights in Fairbanks and emerald green. The bell tower in Brussels rings gloriously, but it still takes my breath away to see Denali. Oh, it still takes my breath away to see.
I've never been more thankful to be in Alaska. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, and my second song, as promised, is a very new song. It's not yet released on an album, but we did just put out a really cool demo version of it on our Patreon page, and this is a song I wrote during quarantine called An Angel with No Wings. Oh, knickknacks, a shoebox of bad news, torn up letter and a picture of you. And the years, they've flown on by, but sometimes till late at night I can see you at the edge of the light. Silver dollar, an angel with no wings, chipped glass and brass winded up to make it sing. And I never lost the tune, was still young and I didn't have a clue that I could wake up in a world without you. We're all fine until we're not, and that's the only truth we've got to cling to. When this late, then we're gone, and the years they've flown on by. But sometimes till late at night I can see you at the edge of the light. I can see you at the edge of the light. Old knickknacks, a shoebox of bad news, torn up letter and a picture of you. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, guys.